Chiefs-Chargers in Brazil on Friday on YouTube. They're going to give everyone that game for free. They're so generous because the rest of the season they're going to fleece you for all your money.
That's one, Scott. That division, to me, based on what's happened to the Chiefs the last couple seasons, that division, the AFC West, could be up for grabs here. I know Chiefs fans think I'm probably out of my mind.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
If you believe he should be in the Hall of Fame, there's, let's let him wait another 2 years. Wait, he's already dead at this point. Like, what are you waiting for? Another 2 to 3 years. He's either in or he's out. And sometimes you look at that too, Tom, it's like you can't tell, the history of Major League Baseball without Pete Rose.
Frankly, the writers have some standard that they want to hold players to, which seems to fluctuate on a player-to-player basis. So he should be in the Hall of Fame, but I'm not sure how quickly he'll get there.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
You are a Pirates fan. I don't think you've got a reason good enough for me to be wearing Met stuff when the Mets are playing the Pirates right now. I don't think I'm going to go, okay, I see it at the end of your explanation.
I'm going to put it on Vinny. I'm going to put it on all the Mets fans. The Pirates won 2 in a row. They fired the manager over the weekend. A new era of Pirates baseball has begun.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on Sports.
Welcome to hour number 3, our third and final live right here on this Tuesday morning on the Early Line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie. I am Ben. One more hour to go up until 11 a.m. Eastern time on a night that starts the conference finals, both in the NBA playoffs and in the Stanley Cup postseason. We just broke things down on the ice with Joe Madden. Game number 1 tonight in Raleigh between the Hurricanes and our reigning Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. Carolina, a home ice favorite in the debut game of the Eastern Conference Finals. But the reigning champs, the Florida Panthers, have that playoff pedigree, the championship experience. They are the series outright favorites. It is also game number 1 in OKC. The Thunder back in the Western Conference Finals for the first time since 2016. They will host the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have reached the Western Conference Finals for a second straight year. OKC, 7.5-point home favorite. Total now standing at 216. We'll ask you about this series. We'll talk about Game 1. We'll break it all down here in this third and final hour. Bryan Fonseca joins us to close out the show. And, of course, some MLB previews and picks on this Tuesday with a full card around the bigs as well. Plenty to get to, DRS, in this third and final hour.
Absolutely. Good on a Tuesday. Major League Baseball, full slate. We'll have some fun with that. The hot topics never stop to flow. And maybe, I don't know, I know some of the topics are tabled till tomorrow at the NFL owners meeting. Could we get some answers back? Because,
maybe.
Look, usually old people are early risers, Ben. I'm in my late 40s, so I'm not that old. But the NFL owners, they're usually old. So I'm sure they're probably voting between 8 to 9 o'clock in the Twin Cities out there. I think we might get one of those proposals to come through earlier than later, which would be nice.
Maybe so, right? The discussions at least starting on this Tuesday in Minneapolis. The owners' meetings this week in the Twin Cities today and tomorrow. We would expect some resolution on those proposed rule changes. Tush-push, playoff seeding, onside kick, Summer Olympic Games, and NFL players being allowed to play flag football. I would expect the takes to continue from the mind of Donnie Rightside, at least throughout the course of this week. DRS, you just said something there. You're a man who keeps a very strict and rigid schedule based on having to host a morning show. You're up bright and early. You're asleep bright and early on the night prior. if you were working in a normal 9 to 5, or maybe even if you're in sports media hosting drive time radio, 4 to 7, 3 to 6, what time would you go to bed and what time would you wake up?
It wouldn't matter that much because I have to explain this to people a lot because you can have a regular job, which I've had quote unquote regular jobs my whole life. You can go to those regular jobs and be sleepy. Now, granted, if you're driving a train or you're a boat, like you have to be rested and ready. I'm just talking like, let's say a sales position. You can yawn your way through the day. You can doze off. You can look off left and right. The one thing that people understand is like we have great jobs that we have, but understand this, being on a 3-hour morning show and then radio right after it. So basically I'm on a block of 4 hours. Like I can't be lagging. Like Ben would not appreciate me coming on being tired and low energy, throw it to Donnie, he's not paying attention. You can't do that. So I think I like sacrifice a lot to get to bed early. So I have respect for the producers, the network we have, and Ben himself, where I need to be prepared for the show. And that's why I do it. But if I was not on the air, look, I'm up watching all the games. I'll watch Monday Night Football right through it. The late games here, because you can buy time during the day to sort of catch that little bit of a feel. Now, after the show, hey, Donnie, you can relax, but you got to be on your P's and Q's for a 4-hour block on national radio and TV. You have to take that seriously. But for me, to answer the question, I would stay up much later if I did not have to be on the air. That's a fact.
It's high energy, right? You're always on when you are hosting a television and radio show. There is no doubt about it. There have been days where I'm a little bit groggy, where I wish I could send some emails or sit with my camera off on a meeting, but we are very pleased and privileged to do what we do here on the early line. If I was working nights, I would be up watching every game and then waking up a little bit later on that morning following, but we're up bright and early and we enjoy what we do. All right, DRS, let's talk about game number 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Let's talk about this series as a whole. In 2 scenarios that might both seem a little bit unlikely according to the odds, but we debate which is more likely. It was a question for all of you about the WCF and Fade the Public. Also, our natural conversation is just kind of sparking curiosity on the fly. Does anybody refer to the conference finals as like the WCF, right? There's like the acronym that we use to shorten it, but nobody's like game 1 of the WCF, right?
No, absolutely not. It's kind of funny because I think they probably try to push that just a little bit at that point, but nobody reacts that way. Not a chance.
All right, so which WCF outcome is more likely? That was the question at SportsGrid in our Fade the Public poll. Again, 2 unlikely scenarios, at least based on the odds. But we had to make it a little bit fun because OKC is a minus 375 favorite outright. If we were to ask you who wins, we would assume that much like the odds makers, most of the public would back the Thunder as the 1 seed. So here are the 2 options, DRS, in this Fade the Public poll. Which is most likely? The Timberwolves win the Western Conference Finals outright, or the Thunder get this done very quickly in a 4-game sweep. Now, this has kind of led to a lopsided return, as most of the public believes out of these 2 choices, Minnesota winning the series is more likely than OKC pulling off the sweep in only 4 games. About 71% of the vote saying the Timberwolves winning the series. Again, more likely than the Thunder pulling off a 4-game sweep.
Yeah, pretty simple there, too, because, I mean, Timberwolves are a solid team. 4-1 victory in round number 1 against the Los Angeles Lakers, 4-1 victory over the Warriors. Even though Steph Curry didn't play, that's 4 straight games to end the series, which they won, coming in rested and ready. We love the Thunder. Thunder are a great team, but the Thunder also went to 7 games. They didn't go 4-game sweep over Memphis, 4-game sweep in round number 2 over Denver, so we're expecting an extended series. Then for me, it's more likely that the Timberwolves win this series than the Thunder sweep. And I don't have the price points up in front of me right now because obviously it is a dog price for the Timberwolves to win the series, as you see at a 3-1 price, but the Thunder sweep has to be way higher than a 3-1 price point here. So it's almost as if you're asking the public, which is the more sound bet to make just based on the odds, and they're answering correctly with the Timberwolves win. Now, also understand this. Would you be overwhelmingly, oh my goodness, I can't believe that upset the Timberwolves will? No. Like, Julius Randle's playing great basketball. The Ant-Man's one of the best players in the NBA. Rudy Gobert is that center, and a lot of veteran players filling in. We love the Thunder. The Thunder are great. The Thunder have home court advantage. The Thunder should win this series. But if we're looking at 6 and 7 games here, no surprise. And even if we do get to 7 games and it's the Timberwolves that win it, hey, so be it at this point. So Thunder sweep possibility, I don't think so. Timberwolves win, better possibility for me.
I would not be surprised. Would I be slightly, you always say surprised and shocked. I would not be overly stunned, let's call it, if Minnesota wins the Western Conference Finals in a tightly contested series. I expect Oklahoma City to still win the West and represent this conference in the NBA Finals. To your point, DRS, series correct score market, team to win, and in how many games, the duration of the set, OKC in 4 zip. Plus 490. So yes, a much larger price than the 3-1 outright number on Minnesota to win this series. What is interesting though, that minus 375 price backing the Thunder outright, the shortest price in the series correct score market, team to win it and in how many games, is OKC in a gentleman's sweep in only 5 at plus 270. And yet I think, DRS, both you and I are expecting at least 6 games in this series. Over under total games set at 5.5. The over has the juice at minus 140. So some slight odds disparity there. Let's preview this Tuesday slate around the big. Up next.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rim. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple 15.5 point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune in to Game Time Decisions weekdays on SportsGrid.
Did you know sportsbooks tend to draw up tighter bet lines for events that get even more bettors, like championship games or major matchups? My tip, try betting on less popular sports. You might have a better shot at beating those odds. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
A Major League Baseball preview for a full Tuesday slate around the bigs here on the Early Line. Donnie, Ben, breaking down the MLB card on this Tuesday. Earlier in hour 2, DRS and MLB buy or sell, we asked the question, are the Detroit Tigers a legit World Series contender.
Yeah.
We were buying that notion with the best record in baseball, the Tigers, 31-17, despite getting hammered yesterday in St. Louis by the red-hot Redbirds. Under the arch, stellar performance out of Sonny Gray. The Cardinals win 11-4. St. Louis has now won 13 of its last 15 games, and yet not a favorite today. Why? Tarek Skubal on the bump for Detroit. Minus 186, live money line price, a total of 7.5. Will the Tigers bounce back with Skubal getting the start?
Yeah, this is one of those games where you tell, hey, Skip, man, my knee a little flared up on me overnight. You know, maybe you want to sit down this one. Not really sure if I want to play in that Cardinals lineup. Why? Because Tarek Skubal has been nothing short of an absolute force on the season and particularly over the last 30 days. You take a look at his last 30 days, been 118 batters that he's faced, a walk percentage at under 2%. But how about a combined strikeout percentage of 39%? That's astronomically high. An ISO power number against 063, a weighted on base percentage of 231. Let's get in analytically here. He's had 30 innings over the past 30 days that he's pitched, an ERA of 2.67. But look at the analytical numbers. A FIP of 1.32 and an XFIP of 1.56. Good luck touching him today. Now, on the opposite side, Eric Fetty is a pitcher that does have a higher XFIP number, but he's been decent over the past 30 days. If you look at his ERA, Ben, a 3.45, but that XFIP number at 4.84. He was decent in his last start. Now, the one thing that he's been doing well here is on the season, doing well as a right-handed pitcher against left-handed batters. An ISO of 106 against on the season combined and a weighted on base percentage of 297. But look to lefties, an 072 on the season and a 262 weighted on base percentage. And also in the last 30 days, an 043 ISO power number. Why is that important? Look at the lefties in the lineup today for Detroit. They do damage against right-handed pitching. Kerry Carpenter, Colt Keith, Riley Green, Zach McKinstry, Trey Sweeney. That's the matchup that you want to see today. If Fetty turns into old Eric Fetty that we love to fade, this should be a walk-away easy victory. And also, 74-degree temperatures, 15-mile-an-hour winds or so blowing out to right field. That's an advantage for left-handed batters. I don't think it's going to matter for St. Louis. They ain't going to touch Skubal, but I'm interested to see those left-handed bats going up against Fetty, who hasn't given up a lot of to left-handed batters.
The reigning AL Cy Young winner in Tarek Skubal, now the AL Cy Young favorite at plus 195. Houston's Hunter Brown, second best price at plus 440. Now, with all that being said about Skubal, in his last start against the Boston Red Sox, did get roughed up a little bit. 7 innings of work, allowing 5 earned run. Did K11. He has had at least 8 strikeouts in his last 4 starts. And for Skubal DRS, a 4-2 record this year. Detroit did win the game against the Red Sox last week, even allowing 5 earned run for Tarek Skubal in his first 2 starts of the year. 2 losses, allowed a total of 7 earned runs. In his next 6 starts, 4 earned runs in total in those 6 outings before the rough day in Fenway against Boston, or perhaps it was at home. It was at home in Detroit against the Red Sox, but expected to have a good outing on the road against St. Louis, trying to slow down the Cardinals. Win total 75.5 for St. Louis. They've got 26 wins this year. They're more than a third of the way to that win total already, exceeding expectation early. The LA Dodgers riding a 4-game skid tonight at home against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And again, that expected to end. The Dodgers greater than a $2 favorite with Yoshinobu Yamamoto on the mound for LA, taking on the D-backs. DRS, that price, minus 225, minus 230 now on the money line. Will the odds makers be correct? And will that 4-game slide for LA come to a close?
They should be. Take a look at Yamamoto, his last 22 innings over the past 30 days, a 3.68 ERA, which isn't shut down. It's okay at this point, and an XFIP number of 3.67, which is actually better. He should be able to somewhat quiet the bats down for Arizona, like, I don't know, not give up 9 runs with multiple home runs today. But the focus, as always, will be on that Dodgers lineup, which presents itself on a day-to-day basis, particularly against right-handed pitching, very, very well. You take a look at Ryan Nelson, 17 on my card out of 28 pitchers today over the past 30 days. He's got a 2.8 3.87 ERA, which is great, but a slightly higher xFIP number of 4.16. If we focus on what Nelson has done well on the season, only 63 batters he's faced from the right side. He's got great ISO power number and weighted on base percentage numbers, a 136 and a 290 respectively. Over the past 30 days, Ben, 43 batters he's faced from the right-hand side, a 125 ISO and a 238 weighted on base percentage. So, yes, the right-handed batters can get to Ryan Nelson, but the focus is going to be on those lefties today because the last 30 days, which only includes 21 batters that Ryan Nelson has faced, that's a 200 ISO and a weighted on base percentage of 341 and a K rate under 20%. So the lefties in the lineup, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Max Muncy, should be able to deliver. The Dodgers should break out of their slump today, but I'm not so much focused on the right-handed batters who all have great numbers, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But if I'm thinking of a chance for maybe a home run, it's going to be Freddie Freeman and also Shohei Ohtani, chance for an RBI, both of those guys, and extra base hits. Those two guys are my focus. But yes, the Dodgers should win today. Better pitcher, better lineup, they should win.
A lot of home runs for Arizona last night in that 9-5 win. Despite the defeat, the Dodgers did get home run number 17, the most in the major leagues from Shohei Ohtani last night. Yoshi Yamamoto, first 7 outings of the year, allowed a total of 4 earned runs. He has given up 8 combined in his last 2 starts. A series begins today in Toronto between the Blue Jays and the Padres. Dylan Cease gets the start for San Diego. The Padres DRS reeling, and how could you not be when you get swept in the opening series of the inaugural Vetter Cup against their bitter rivals in the Seattle Mariners? You have to wonder what the feel in the clubhouse is for the Padres at this moment.
Yeah, exactly. They better win. That's certainly the notion here. And going over to Toronto, we'll see if that plays out. 52 degrees is the temperature. Who knows if that roof will be open or not. But here's the focus. Chris Bassett is a decent pitcher, but over the past 30 days, a 5.14 ERA, but he has a much lower xFIP number. But also, he's been very good against right-handed batters, particularly on the season, starting to slip just a little bit over the past 30 days, in particular left-handed batters, Ben. A 224 ISO and a weighted on base percentage of 396 over his last 61 batters he's faced from the left-hand side. Those focal points, Louis Arise, Jackson Merrill, Gavin Sheets, and Jake Cronenworth, all really good numbers against right-handed pitching. Should be a bounce back today for the San Diego Padres, at least on offense.
An ever so slight favorite in Toronto. More around the bigs next.
You are a Pirates fan. I don't think you've got a reason good enough for me to be wearing Met stuff when the Mets are playing the Pirates right now. I don't think I'm gonna go, okay, I see it at the end of your explanation.
I'm gonna put it on Vinny. I'm gonna put it on all the Mets fans. The Pirates won 2 in a row. Fired the manager over the weekend. A new era of Pirates baseball has begun.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Your college performance does not relate to the National Football League. It never does.
They played side by side with each other, and he wasn't as good as Quinn Ewers. That's an issue. That's a major issue.
It wasn't that he wasn't as good as Quinn Ewers.
Ever got to Texas?
It wasn't that he wasn't as good as Quinn Ewers. It was Quinn Ewers' program, which Steve Sarkisian made very clear the entirety of the time that Arch Manning was in Austin. So for you to argue that because Ewers is a 7th-round pick, Arch Manning is not that good and not deserving of being first overall is asinine. It is wrong. It is incorrect.
I told you he's going to be number 1 overall. My whole thing was I'm buying
you're doing your thing now where you double down on a take
no, I'm not doing that. The best quarterback prospect to ever hit college football can't play.
He's
over
not so. There were 2
who didn't even play good
quarterback recruits in the history of the sport.
Quinn Ewers couldn't even play at Ohio State. He couldn't even play at Ohio State.
Quinn Ewers. Go look it up.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Chiefs Chargers in Brazil on Friday on YouTube. They're going to give everyone that game for free. They're so generous because the rest of the season they're going to fleece you for all your money.
That's one, Scott. That division to me, based on what's happened to the Chiefs the last couple seasons, that division, the AFC West, could be up for grabs here. I know Chiefs fans think I'm probably out of my mind.
Pharrell, coast to coast, only on SportsGrid.
little bit of a doubleheader in Minneapolis today for the Twins and the Guardians. I wonder if the owners are going to leave their meetings in their ballrooms and maybe head out to Target Field today to take on some AL Central divisional duel between the Twins and the Guardians. Game number 1 yesterday. Minnesota up, I think, 2-1 in the 4th inning when this game was postponed due to inclement weather. They will resume that game about an hour 15 prior to the scheduled start for today's full game, the second game of this divisional duel this week between the Twins and the Guardians. Pretty short numbers today between the two. Minnesota a -118 money line favorite. The Guardians an ever so slight dog on the other side. Now even money +100. Total down from 7.5 now to 7. Not great weather this week in Minnesota. And they got to finish the first game of this set DRS before. How does that impact the handicap?
Yeah, probably going to be a complete stay away at this point because you're looking at temperatures. Man, it's one thing like, hey, it's spring and it's 68 degrees. It's 45 degrees at first pitch and it's 7:40 with rain expected. It's going to be freezing. I'd be surprised. They're going to try to get at least one of these in, but game number 2 is going to be a mess. If we're just looking at the starting pitchers, you do have some sort of an interesting circumstance. Gavin Williams is 5th on the card today with an xFIP of 3.15. You love to see that. But also at the same time, you take a look at his 4.03 ERA. So wait a second, he's getting a little bit unlucky. Yes. Then you take a look at Chris Paddock on the mound here from Minnesota. He's got a 2.15 ERA, but a 4.86 xFIP, almost the exact opposite. So if you're just looking at pitchers, Gavin Williams over the past 30 days, lefties and righties have been starting to get to him. But again, is he getting just a little bit unlucky at that point? Is that going to turn around today? And also, it's not a great hitter's ballpark overall. Now you end in the cold temperatures and rain into the forecast. If they do play, trying to force this way through, which is always a little bit of a food for thought. Understand this about baseball. It is a business. They don't want to come back and play extra games. So when the umpire understands that the conditions are bad, hey, that ball's 4 inches off the plate, strike 3. Let's keep the game moving at this point. That's always tough when you're over backers. So I probably lean more towards the under, not because I like the pitching matchups, but because the weather conditions, number 1, and also the understanding where the ump is not going to be, hey, I'm going to have a real tight strike zone today, hoping we get a 3.5-hour game in the pouring, freezing cold. That's dangerous. Under for me tonight, and we don't even know who the starting lineups are going to be technically.
Yeah, it's a good point, DRS. Minnesota, of course, had their 13-game win streak, the longest this year in the Bigs, snapped on Sunday in Milwaukee by the Brewers. They were 13-20 before that win streak. Minnesota now, they are 26-21, trailing the Tigers by 4.5 games in the AL Central. The Guardians 25-21. They had played much better baseball after a slow start, but Cleveland enters this series against Minnesota, having lost 4 straight in 6 of their last 8. They are trailing 2-1 in the opening game. That resumes in the 4th inning later today in Minnesota before that scheduled game that DRS was just breaking down. A Bronx battle tonight between the New York Yankees and the Texas Rangers inside Yankee Stadium. Now, Patrick Corbin ain't great, but Will Warren with a 4.61 ERA, who, in fairness, has been a little bit better here in his 3 starts in the month of May. Will Warren and the New York Yankees are nearly a $2 home favorite against the Texas Rangers. Total 8.5 DRS. Supposed to be a pretty nice night here in the greater New York City area. What's the play?
Yeah, wind blowing in from right field here, but only 7 miles per hour, 62-degree temperatures. But how about this? With Will Warren, out of 28 pitchers today on the card, Ben, xFIP-wise, he's number 3 on the card. It's 25 and a third innings pitched, a 4.26 ERA, which is elevated, but his 4.26 turns into a 2.62 xFIP, which is really good. Now, if we take a look at Patrick Corbin, nobody really likes him all that much. 28 and a third innings pitched over the past month, but his ERA, Ben, 3.18. 4.53 xFIP, which is elevated. But Patrick Corbin is a left-handed pitcher. Here's the problem. He doesn't get out lefty. So immediately you go down and say, okay, I want to focus on lefty versus lefty matchups. You don't have great ones here for the Yankees. The right-handed batters usually do the damage. Paul Goldschmidt's got high numbers, but this team hasn't faced all that much left-handed pitching over the past 30 days. Maybe the best hitter in the lineup through limited at-bats is lefty Austin Wells. He has 17 at-bats going up against left-handed pitching over the past month. How about a 467 ISO and a weighted on-base percentage of 469, but the all-important lefty-on-lefty matchup, an 11% K rate, which is fantastic. So if I'm looking for a sneaky bat late in that lineup that really matches up against Patrick Corbin today, it's probably going to be Austin Wells for me.
Listen, Will Warren, I apologize. I was not familiar with your advanced analytics game. And DRS,
Nope.
you really did crack me up being like Patrick Corbin. Nobody really likes him. I think
nobody
you
likes
meant
him.
that from
Nobody.
a handicapping perspective.
I don't know.
Maybe not.
Maybe
in
it's
his
a separate
personal
playing the games. You never know. Could.
Far flight from Arlington to New York City. You do have to wonder. Game 1 in OKC. Thunder, Timberwolves. Next.
Did you know sportsbooks tend to draw up tighter bet lines for events that get even more bettors, like championship games or major matchups? My tip? Try betting on less popular sports. You might have a better shot at beating those odds. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Chiefs Chargers in Brazil on Friday on YouTube. They're going to give everyone that game for free. They're so generous because the rest of the season they're going to fleece you for all your money.
That's one, Scott. That division to me, based on what's happened to the Chiefs the last couple seasons, that division, the AFC West, could be up for grabs here. I know Chiefs fans think I'm probably out of my mind.
Pharrell, coast to coast, only on SportsGrid.
I actually like the fact that they went 7 games against a quality opponent here and still had to face adversity even in a game number 7. How are we setting up this next series where they rested Minnesota Timberwolves team taking on OKC fresh from the fight here?
They had an extremely, maybe it's just too strong a statement to say, easier pathway than people thought, particularly because of their size.
The early line, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high, but the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that roof. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple 18.5 point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Game number 1 of the Western Conference Finals tonight in Oklahoma City between the Thunder and the Timberwolves. The T-Wolves in the Western Conference Finals for a second consecutive season. This young core in OKC advancing to a new stage and new heights. The first appearance for this franchise since 2016 in the Western Conference Finals, but really the first time for Mark Daigneault, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and the rest of the crew. Only a short turnaround, DRS, for OKC. Of course, victorious at home in game number 7 on Sunday afternoon. Minnesota's been off for about 6 days after making quick work of the Steph Curry-less Golden State Warriors in only 5 games in their second round set. Will it have an impact? Let's discuss. 7.5 point spread in favor of the Thunder. Total on the rise day over day, now at 216.5 on the FanDuel Sportsbook. OKC, Minnesota. Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. DRS, what do you expect it to look like tonight?
It should be fun. Like, seeing 2 new teams set up in the Western Conference Finals, last year getting to the Western Conference Finals, Minnesota, can they get over the hurdle this year? OKC, sort of fight for that right of, we won 68 games, let's prove it in the playoffs. And SGA is the true MVP of the league, vanquishing Nikola Jokic in that last series as sort of saying, you know what? I already probably was going to get the award, but that just drives home the extra stake here. But let's understand this. The 7.5 that you looked at for a couple days now, most people in the betting public, according to the FanDuel Sportsbook, are betting towards Minnesota. 65% of the spread bets coming in, 64% of the money as it stands right now here in New Jersey. And I would tend to agree with that because you're looking at that, wait a second, rested and ready. I think they can win game number 1, but if not, they can keep it close. All makes some sense. But I'm actually betting this series a little bit differently. I like the fact that OKC was at home in a game number 7, let's just call it 2 days ago, and is going to get right back out on the court, keep the momentum going. The fans will be excited. It's a new round and it's a new series. Just sort of saying, you know what, let's get ourselves off to a good foot. Now, secondarily, in game number 2, I'm actually looking more towards the Minnesota Timberwolves because they had the layoff. They're going to get caught with an avalanche of emotion in game number 1. Can they win? Sure, they can win. They're a good basketball team. But I'm focused more on game number 2. So for me, looking at this, where most people thinking it's a detriment to take a look at OKC, all that pressure of game number 7, I get that. But I still think that adrenaline of that victory is still there for game number 1 and a better chance for Minnesota to win game number 2. So for me, 7s are out there at other outlets here. 7.5 at the FanDuel Sportsbook. If you ask me also, Ben, where this line is going to be around game time, I probably would think it would be closer to 7 than, let's just say, going to 8 points here. But I do think we could have a double-digit victory tonight for OKC. I'll buck the trend and the public, and I'll take Oklahoma City tonight to cover the line.
64% of the money on the spread on Minnesota. 65% of the overall volume of bets on the spread on Minnesota. Oklahoma City has been booked as a favorite in all but 3 games the entirety of this year, but in every one, all 11 of their NBA playoff games so far, including all 7 in their second-round series against the Denver Nuggets. In fact, they have been at least a 5-point favorite in every game. Shortest spread in favor of OKC, with Game 7 closing at 8.5 points for the Thunder in any of their home games so far throughout this playoff run. 6 of those. The best covered team in the NBA all year long, that would be the Thunder, covering in more than 65% of their games. Just 2 covers in their last 9 since Game 2 of their opening round series against Memphis. And both covers, DRS, were rather comfortably. The 43-point rout of Denver in Game 2, the 32-point win in Game number 7 just a few days ago. Kind of a reverse scenario for OKC in terms of what they saw to start off that series against the Nuggets. It was Denver off the hard-fought battle in Game 7 against the Clippers, riding that momentum in a fourth-quarter comeback to steal Game number 1. It was Oklahoma City who had the long rest. Again, rest versus rust in these spots in the postseason, always up for debate. The Timberwolves were booked as a favorite in all 5 games against Golden State. Of course, we expected that to be the case after the Warriors lost Stephen Curry. They were an underdog 3 times in only their 5 games against the LA Lakers, 2-1 both straight up, and against the number in those 3 games as a dog in the opening round set. 216.5 the total, DRS. Are you expecting, if OKC does win comfortably tonight, this game to push to the over or stay under that margin?
I think there's, again, the premise typically of how I view a playoff series, particularly now we're getting late in the playoffs, right? Eastern Conference, Western Conference finals, is you get a little bit more wide open to start. Because understand this, these 2 teams know each other, yes. They've been around the block, but you don't know the playoff sets here, right? Games 1, games 2. Okay, saw that play before, defend a little bit more. As you start to get 1-1 series, 2-2 series, 3-2 into game number 6, right? You're saying to yourself like, okay. Now every possession matters. And I'm not trying to say that every possession doesn't matter in games 1 and 2, but it's a little more free-flowing because you don't have the added pressure on the other side of a team trying to close out or a team just trying to stay alive and doing everything in their power to try to avoid elimination. So I do tend to lean on the over, but I don't love it all that much because you do have one team that just got off of that tight series that we talked about with the Nuggets, one team with 6 days off. So yes, their legs should be rested and ready, but you're again in a controlled environment where everything matters in the Western Conference Finals. So I do lean overs early in the series, which technically would lead me into tonight, where I would lean towards the over. And then as we get later in the series, that's going to start to shift. So those 216s that we have now, Ben, probably turn into 214s and 212s and 209s as we go later in the series.
Yesterday when we discussed this game, 215 was the over-under. This thing is getting hammered to the over. DRS, it just shut up live on FanDuel to 218. For that over-under, which is the highest total for Minnesota so far this postseason. 10 games for the T-Wolves, 5 over, 5 under, 11 games for OKC, 6 under, 5 over. I think we have two really good defenses on display. And JY, when he was here briefly yesterday, did mention how these two sides kind of match up. Both have used their height advantages at times. Both have some pretty good size in the interior, but two star players out in the guard spots and on the wing. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going to win the MVP award in 2024-25 in the regular season, on full display as we saw in Game 7, a 35-point performance to knock off Denver. Shai, 31-plus in 5 of the 7 in that second-round series against the Nuggets. On the other side, for Minnesota, Anthony Edwards, his points prop tonight, 25.5, 31 and a hook, by the way, that number for SGA. A comparison between two of the young, up-and-coming stars, DRS, in the association.
And by the way, yesterday, you could find numbers out there on Anthony Edwards, Ben, at 27.5, now down to 25.5. Wow. I agree with that here. So again, it's interesting that the numbers going higher on the game, but lower on the superstar. And that has something to do about a superstar defender that's probably going to be lining up on Anthony Edwards, and that's Lou Dort, which means maybe the door opens up a little bit more for a guy like Julius Randle. Now, can Anthony Edwards score 35 points in game number 1 with rested legs? Of course he can do that. But sometimes you just look at the price point and say, okay, if it was 26.5, 27.5 yesterday, it's now down to 25.5. Do you agree or disagree? Because some people might say, you know what? 25.5, that's a buy point for me. No doubt about it. He's going to be in the high 20s, and you go and take that. But just from me looking, I think that Anthony Edwards price coming down makes a lot of sense here. I look for them to hone in and say, okay, somebody else is going to have to beat us without, it's not going to be Anthony Edwards. And also, again, Lou Dort's tremendous. That'll be the primary defender. Hard to beat Lou Dort, man. Guy's good.
20-plus for Anthony Edwards in 9 of the 10 games for Minnesota this postseason, but only over 25.5 4 times. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, as we said, to see 31.5, not overly surprising. The Ant-Man, by the way, at least 9 triples, 3-point attempts in his last 3 games of the series against Golden State. One of the key reasons that Minnesota took advantage of the absence of Steph Curry, Julius Randle, sensational DRS in that second-round series against the Dubs. Points prop tonight, 19.5. Jalen Williams, a huge bounce back in Game 7 from a disappointing Game 6, 24 points to help SGA and OKC win that 7th game.
Yeah, you know I love my secondary options. You got 2 really good ones here, and it's always good to get those good vibes because both of these players coming off a good series, but also more importantly, Williams coming off a really good game in an important pivotal game number 7. I expect that momentum to carry over tonight as well.
Yep, we'll talk about it with Bryan Fonseca up next.
You are a Pirates fan. I don't think you've got a reason good enough for me to be wearing Met stuff when the Mets are playing the Pirates right now. I don't think I'm gonna go, okay, I see it at the end of your explanation.
I'm gonna put it on Vinny. I'm gonna put it on all the Mets fans. The Pirates won 2 in a row. They fired the manager over the weekend. A new era of Pirates baseball has begun.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Your college performance does not relate to the National Football League. It never does.
They played side by side with each other, and he wasn't as good as Quinn Ewers. That's an issue. That's a major issue.
It wasn't that it wasn't as good as Quinn Ewers.
Ever got to Texas.
It wasn't that it wasn't as good as Quinn Ewers. It was Quinn Ewers' program, which Steve Sarkisian made very clear the entirety of the time that Arch Manning was in Austin. So for you to argue that because Ewers is a 7th-round pick, Arch Manning is not that good and not deserving of being first overall is asinine. It is wrong. It is incorrect.
He's going to be number 1 overall. My whole thing was I'm buying
you're doing your thing now where you double down on a take that is incorrect.
The best quarterback prospect to ever hit college football can't play.
He's
over
not
a 7th-round
There were
pick
2
who didn't even
perfectly
play
rated
good.
quarterback recruits in the history of the sport.
Quinn Ewers couldn't even play at Ohio State. He couldn't even play at Ohio State.
Quinn Ewers. Go look it up.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Chiefs Chargers in Brazil on Friday on YouTube. They're going to give everyone that game for free. They're so generous because the rest of the season they're going to fleece you for all your money.
That's one, Scott. That division to me, based on what's happened to the Chiefs the last couple seasons, that division, the AFC West, could be up for grabs here. I know Chiefs fans think I'm probably out of my mind.
Pharrell, coast to coast, only on SportsGrid.
Game number 1 of the Western Conference Finals on this Tuesday evening in Oklahoma City. It's the Thunder and the Timberwolves for a spot in the NBA Finals. So to preview this series and the opening game of it, Bryan Fonseca joins us live right here on this Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid. Fonseca here for 2 segments. He'll help me round out the show looking at the Eastern Conference Finals between the Knicks and the Pacers in our next segment as well. Fonseca, as always, appreciate the time and thank you for being here.
And if anybody's watching, don't let the New York hat fool you because I really like the Pacers.
Oh, a couple of Pacers
Shot
guys.
across the bow. Yeah.
We've got 3 guys who believe the Pacers could be the right side in what we expect to be a tightly contested Eastern Conference Finals set. Let's start in the Western Conference Finals. And before we dive into the details, Fonseca, of the opening game tonight in Oklahoma City, let's look at the series overall. The Thunder, a hefty favorite to win the West at minus 375. And let's start with the prices themselves. Fonseca, the odds makers believe heavily in OKC. Do you think the Thunder should be as heavily favored as that minus 375 price indicates?
As much as I think OKC is going to win this series, this is too generous of a price because I think Minnesota has a real shot. Like, Minnesota can do this. There are pathways for Minnesota doing this. The 3-point volume that they're able to generate, if they're able to actually generate the looks, because OKC is awesome at the passing lanes. This is going to become a turnover battle. I mentioned this yesterday on my YouTube channel, or actually Sunday on my YouTube channel, where one of the biggest advantages Oklahoma City has is that they generate a ton of turnovers. They force a ton. We saw this in the closeout game against Denver, and with Minnesota, they turn the ball over more than anybody else left in the playoffs. That's going to be a problem. With Oklahoma City, however, like, you do wonder about, are they going to get enough secondary offense? And does Minnesota's defense, like, do they have enough to make this offense struggle, as Denver did? You know, Denver doesn't have like a great defense. Minnesota has a good defense, a really good one. And it can be problematic for Oklahoma City in terms of generating that secondary offense. So I think 375, like, I'm just not going to bet it. The way I'm going to play it is, let's see if Minnesota can steal game 1, and then I'll buy in on the Thunder, because I think they could win in 6 or 7 from there.
Always interesting, Brian, in game number 1s of how teams are actually going to come out. Minnesota much more rested than OKC, that whole rest versus rush type of theory, but a heavy favorite here tonight at the FanDuel Sportsbook with Oklahoma City as a 7.5-point favorite. Before we even get into the totals, how about the line itself at 7.5? And what are your expectations tonight between the Timberwolves and the Thunder, according to that line?
Again, I don't love this line. I mean, look, I understand the rhythm that Oklahoma City's in. There's something to be said for rest is overrated. And I think we saw that last round where teams who were well rested just lost in game 1 on their home floor. Boston, for example, they had a rest advantage. They lost to the Knicks. Cleveland had a rest advantage. They lost to the Pacers. And there may have been even another example. Actually, Minnesota and Golden State. Minnesota had the rest advantage in that series. Golden State had a 7-game war with the Houston Rockets and came out and won game 1 despite a Steph Curry injury. And then that was the series from there because Minnesota just routed them from that point on. So with this, it's like, it's not a spread I'm touching. I do like the under, though, and the total is actually moved to 218, Crazy. which is real interesting to me, given that it was at 215.5 like very recently. So I'm a little surprised because, you know, Minnesota's offense tends to struggle. Oklahoma City's offense is not always the cleanest, and we just talked about how good their defense is, and both of these defenses are really good. So I could see this being an under series, but maybe that's a little bit too predictable. It's not something that I'm like, hey, you need to bet like X amount on. I'm never doing that. But, you know, the numbers just overall are kind of surprising here. Like, is Oklahoma City overvalued both in game 1 and for the series? And then you have the total where it's like, are we sure we're going to get to 218? But maybe we are, because Minnesota does like to shoot threes.
The odds makers have had full belief in OKC the entirety of this playoff run. They have been at least a 5-point favorite. Oklahoma City has in every single game so far in the postseason, all 11. Let's compare the two superstars on either side. Anthony Edwards, 25.5, his points prop. Fonseca for game number 1. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, death taxes, a points prop somewhere around 30 or 31. 31.5 is where it checks in for the opening game of the Western Conference Finals tonight. How do you think they will be defended on the other side? And are there matchups to be taken advantage of for both Gilgeous-Alexander and the Ant-Man?
The best one for Ant is probably to get a switch on Chet Holmgren and try, but you're dealing with length at that point. The reason is because Oklahoma City is the best equipped to guard Anthony Edwards. They're not going to stop him. They can only hope to contain him. But at the same time, you have a lot of options to throw at him. Like Jalen Williams is a more than competent. He's a very good defender. Lou Dort, who I think is going to get the primary responsibility on Anthony Edwards, he's obviously one of the best. I think he could have been Defensive Player of the Year this year if we didn't just give it to centers. You have Kason Wallace. You have Alex Caruso. You have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander himself. Like, you have a lot of defensive options here to throw at Anthony Edwards, who you're like, hey, you could survive a one-on-one matchup for a little bit. If they're going to send help, then that's fine. And this is where Dante DiVincenzo and Naz Reid are going to have to hit shots. McDaniels as well. McDaniels has to prove like what he's been doing in the playoffs isn't just a fluke, because Minnesota drew 2 matchups where they played no centers. You know, and that's ultimately going to be a thing here where like Isaiah Hartenstein is a center and Chet Holmgren is like half a center, but he has height, length. I wouldn't call him a full-fledged center because he's still growing into his body, but there's that element of it. And then with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, it's like, can you defend him without fouling Minnesota? Like, that's really the challenge there. He's going to try to get Rudy Gobert. He's going to try to, you know, muscle by maybe a McDaniels and what have you. And they don't have as many options to throw on him. So maybe you just try to shut off everybody else's water, so to speak, so that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is forced to score 35, 40 points. But who else is going to be in rhythm at that point? But I think the Thunder have more answers for Anthony Edwards than the reverse, crazy as that sounds.
DRS, we send you the money line. Have a great time. Fonseca and I preview the Eastern Conference Finals next.
Chiefs Chargers in Brazil on Friday on YouTube. They're going to give everyone that game for free. They're so generous because the rest of the season they're going to fleece you for all your money.
That's one, Scott. That division, to me, based on what's happened to the Chiefs the last couple seasons, that division, the AFC West, could be up for grabs here. I know Chiefs fans think I'm probably out of my mind.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
If you believe he should be in the Hall of Fame, there's, let's let him wait another 2 years. Wait, he's already dead at this point. Like, what are you waiting for? Another 2 to 3 years. He's either in or he's out. And sometimes you look at that too, Tom, and say, you can't tell, the history of Major League Baseball without Pete Rose.
Frankly, the writers have some standard that they want to hold players to, which seems to fluctuate on a player-to-player basis. So he should be in the Hall of Fame, but I'm not sure how quickly he'll get there.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
You are a Pirates fan. I don't think you've got a reason good enough for me to be wearing Met stuff when the Mets are playing the Pirates right now. I don't think I'm gonna go, okay, I see it at the end of your explanation.
I'm gonna put it on Vinny. I'm gonna put it on all the Mets fans. The Pirates won 2 in a row. They fired the manager over the weekend. A new era of Pirates baseball has begun.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The conference finals in the NBA postseason begin tonight. Game number 1 in Oklahoma City, Western Conference Finals. The Thunder a 7.5-point favorite against the T-Wolves. OKC a minus 375 outright favorite to win the West. Bryan Fonseca still here for a second consecutive segment. And Fonseca, as we have shared and as you expressed as well, the odds makers have a ton of belief and optimism in the Thunder. Really been that case, at least out west, for a good majority of this season. But with where things are in the Eastern Conference, we'll talk the conference finals between Indiana and New York in just a moment, but not our two top teams that we expected to be at this stage in Boston and or Cleveland. OKC now enters in this Final Four in the association as a minus 180 favorite to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy as an NBA champion. How do you evaluate those odds, those numbers to win that NBA title here entering the conference finals?
Again, I think it's a little ambitious just because of the Timberwolves in particular. Not that I think the Knicks and Pacers can't beat the Thunder. That would be a tall task, obviously. And there's a slated, there's a finals date. The finals are going to start June 5th. We know that. So if your series goes long, you're still going to have a couple days rest. And in between each and every game, there's going to be 2 days rest, except for between games 3 and 4. I think the rest, it'll be cleared up a little bit. But these series are ultimately going to come down to, and this is the thing that people probably won't talk about as much, but whoever are the healthier teams are going to win these conference finals because these games are every other day. And it benefits you to have a long rotation. This is why people like the Thunder, and this is why people like the Pacers ultimately in that series against the Knicks. People who like the Pacers, I should rephrase, like that they have a rotation that can go 10, maybe 11 deep, which is going to be good in a series that's played every other night. Whereas the Knicks, for example, they go 7 deep with confidence, maybe 8. We don't even know who the 8th guy is going to be, but we know Deuce McBride and Mitchell Robinson will be in the rotation. And I actually think Precious Achiuwa could be useful in this series for the Knicks. But I think the Thunder are deserved favorites. I don't want to bet them at minus 185, though. Again, I'll probably wait till after game 1. If they lose game 1, then it's okay, now we can get into Thunder business because I'll get a better price.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think it's very understandable to recognize that OKC should be a favorite, even a strong favorite. It's not exactly the most enticing bet to be made at this current moment. Game number 1 tonight in OKC. Game number 1 tomorrow night in MSG. Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena. The New York Knicks back in the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 2.5 decades since 2000. The last time they were there, they took on the Indiana Pacers, who won the Eastern Conference Finals in 2000 in 6 games. A lot of old rivalry playoff history between Indiana and New York, Fonseca, and some recent. Of course, in the second round last year, it was the Pacers and the Knicks doing battle, Indiana winning in a 7th game inside Madison Square Garden. How tightly contested will the Eastern Conference Finals be between the Knicks and the Pacers this time around?
I have a lot of matchup questions. With Karl Anthony Towns versus Miles Turner, that's going to be fascinating to me. How each one is defended, which team is daring the other one to shoot. Miles Turner, I think, could be very, very problematic in the series for the Knicks if he's just hitting threes because Kristaps Porzingis wasn't able to stretch Karl Anthony Towns out 27, 28 feet out. And Miles Turner could do that because Porzingis wasn't healthy. And we saw what happens when Porzingis is able to do that when he's healthy. It really bends that Knicks defense. And that's something that, Indiana's going to need to do. Pascal Siakam's going to be guarded by OG Anunoby. Good luck to both parties because that's going to be very, very physical. Don't know how that's going to go. Jalen Brunson, he can get his against Andrew Nembhard. We'll see if the Pacers go with him or Aaron Nesmith. And even at times Ben Mathurin, just because he has length and has improved defensively. I think Carlisle is going to be very creative in the series. I think Tom Thibodeau deserves credit for being malleable, a little more malleable last series. But ultimately, like, I have a Pacers to win the Eastern Conference Finals future. So what I might do is hedge with Knicks in 7, because I do think this series goes 7. But I really don't care about home court in this series. I think the Knicks are deservedly favored, but I like that the price is close because the Pacers deserve a lot of respect. The biggest difference between the Pacers this year and last year is last year they couldn't defend. This year they could. Their defense was actually in the top 13 in the NBA, around where the Knicks were, actually. And better in the last couple of months of the regular season, where they established they're one of the best teams in the NBA. So I am not sleeping on the Pacers at all.
Bryan Fonseca, the time always appreciated. The early line returns tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.